will remind you if you will mute yourself to cut down on any background noise. As we go, we will be recording these sessions. They will be available on our wiki and we'll send them out to the group in case someone was not able to make it or if you wanted to review this later. Today, we're going to be talking about accession receiving, creating cases, different ways of creating cases from single animal to herds, importing them in through a spreadsheet, labeling other features like that. We will also be covering our request module, which allows for things to come in digitally from our portal, from, say, sources like GVL and other those coming in the future. Or if you have a hospital directly connected to the lab system, there is a way for them to submit electronically as well, so that you know where it's coming from and to cut down on the accessioning time. There's a couple other features I'll talk about, accession templating and our quick accessioning screen that we have in there. Some other little loose ends with attachments and notes that you can do as well. So again, we're going to start with the accession receiving screen, kind of walking through the basic accessioning process. And so that's where we'll jump in today. And so let me bring this up. All right. So again, as we started before, jumping in with your username and password, get you into the system. We will be focusing mainly on this section up here, the menu, the newest session screen, request screen, quick app. This is where we'll be spending most of our time today. We will touch on the client screen as well when it pertains to creating the client and some of the settings for the client as well. So again, just as a recap, the search screen is how you can find sessions that are in any state, working, new, finalized, that. This is also where you can find the new accession button. So you can either, if you're here already, you can jump there. There's also, if you, as I mentioned before, if you roll over the button, sometimes you'll find there are tooltips there that will show you hotkeys. So actually, we have a hotkey, Alt-N, that you can press anywhere in the system and then it'll jump directly to the new accession screen for you. So just a quick access, quick way to get there. Also, you'll notice sometimes if you hold the Alt key down, some of the menu icons will actually change to get to, again, another quick way to jump to the new accession screen. And again, there's also the menu there as well. I'll also remind you that if you are in a accessioning area and you would like the new accession icon to be in your menu bar, if you go to your name, you can actually modify your bar, put the new accessioning right here in your menu bar wherever you want. Maybe you don't care about coordinator or test search or worksheets. Again, you can modify what your menu bar looks like so that you can get to the things that you want quicker and faster. So again, don't forget to save there. You'll notice that changes your menu bar immediately. All right, so we're going to jump into the newest session screen. That's where we're going to spend a lot of our time today. So in this session, we break it up into two parts. We have the session header and the session body or details. The session header talks about when the case came in, your session number, and the people involved in it, the clients, our DVM owners, things like that. So the first part of the screen is just filling out that header part, getting it started. We made this a separate screen because this is something we wanted to make very quick and efficient so that you could start, you could lock in your session number, get that assigned to the case, even start printing labels, things like that very quickly. Because if there are multiple people doing a session receiving at the same time, distributing numbers can be, you don't want to step on each other. You don't want to get the same number twice. The system will prevent a duplicate number from happening. If you do need one, you could add a suffix to it in that case, but the system will do it. Now, this example system I'm in right now, I have the session number set up to auto suggest and using an A prefix. That is customizable. Each lab can set up their own prefix. They can put the year there at the end, beginning. There's little options of how you format your number. You can also set the system to auto number, or you can do suggest mode. I'm in suggest mode right now. It's going to suggest the next highest number, whatever that number is in the system. If you have it on auto numbering, then it's going to just give a number when you hit the save button, and then there's no real options there. In that sense, it just assigns it out as each one is assigned. As you hit the save button, it's assigning that number out. The other thing we do in the system, as you'll notice, just to remind everybody, is the underlining is an indicator that that's a required field. So I can't create an accession without a release date. Now we default that in anyways, But if you tried to save something that's required, you'll get a little pop-up saying, hey, you can't move forward because that's missing there. So it's just something that we try to make easy and convenient to kind of show you on the screen what's required. Sometimes the fields will turn kind of a red color or a pink color there, as also indicating that it is required as well. There are several optional things when you're creating a session. Now, everything you see here can be updated later, so don't feel like it's a one-time have to get it right now or hold your peace kind of thing. It is something you can come back. You can even change the session number if you need to, assign clients or clinics or whatever you need to at any point. We're just trying to get the case started as quickly and efficiently as possible. The reference number is an external number coming in from your submission. A lot of times, if you're using like reportable diseases, like the Noun project, you may need to fill in something there. The system does have priorities. This is also a customizable list. So if your lab doesn't really support that, you can just have one option there that's the default and don't touch it. But if you want to support different priorities to help indicate speed or types of cases. You can kind of use it for whatever you really want to there. The main thing is with priority, you can have it auto bill certain things. So if you have a basic accession fee for average cases, but if someone asks for something rushed or stat, you can have it bump up a surcharge on it. So priority lets you not only flag it, but you can also add charging around that as well. There's also an option called hold here. We'll come back to that. That's really more about holding the report from the client. We'll touch on that a little bit later when we get into client management. Accession tags is just a keyword tagging system that you can use to flag an accession. Again, you can update this at any point, so don't feel like you have to get this in now. Again, it's an optional field. But if you do want to flag cases as teaching or research or legal or whatever you want to do there, what that's going to allow you to do is that if I'm on the accession search screen, I can easily then take those tags and use it to quickly find those cases. Again, it's just flagging that case or characterizing that case as some type of a session that you want to find. It's another way to kind of flag those and find them later. Again, you can add that at any point. Review also supports having multiple accession reports in the system. So if you do have like a special report for research that's kind of tailored for research, or maybe you have different headers based on labs or sites that things are coming from, you can have different accession report versions of the accession report in the system. And then you can switch that dynamically if you want to. Each lab has its own default that you can set up in the system as well. All right. And then over on the contact side. So again, contacts or clients is a generic term in VetView. As I mentioned before, a client in VetView is any business, entity, organization, somebody that you want to represent in the system. The client screen itself, there is client types. This client type is completely dynamic. You can create as many different categories of people if you want to, or maybe I like to use the word role. What role are they playing on this session? Are they the clinic? Are they the owner? Maybe they're a grower producer. Maybe they're something else in the system. All that's doing is creating a filtering system in VetView. So if I'm coming in later and I'm looking for a clinic, I could come in here and say, okay, I'm looking for a clinic specifically. It'll narrow the filter down in the system. It's doing the same thing on the accession screen itself. I can come in here and say, by default on this accession, I want a clinic, an RDVM, and an owner. Again, you can change that. You can add more people, remove people here as your lab default. So your lab defaults can dictate who you have, how many slots you have up here. It is unlimited. You could have 20 of them if you wanted to that you have in here. And then again, you can set which ones are required and which ones are optional in the system as well. And again, the type here is just a filter. So again, as I start to look in this field and I look for, say, companion animal hospital, the example I like to use a lot, it's going to be just searching through the ones that are flagged as clinics to find. Again, to just making it quicker and easier to find those people. Now, a client can have multiple types. So if you do have that special scenario where you have a particular producer grower who's acting as the submitter and they're also the owner, you can flag a client as both types. So the type, again, is just a filtering mechanism, and I'll show you here. We'll jump over and look at one. I'll just pull myself up here in the system. So again, you can down here into the client types, you can see I can have multiple. So maybe I'm a clinic as a submitter, or maybe I'm both an RDVM and an owner. Again, I can have as many types associated with a client as well. Again, it's just acting as a filtering mechanism in the system. All right, coming back here. So now on identifying clients, one of the biggest challenges we were trying to help achieve is finding the right person, making sure they're in the system, cutting down on duplicates. And also, we noticed there was a lot of effort to verify information, to go back and forth between the client screen and the Accession screen, just to verify basic information. Email addresses, fax numbers, things like that in the system. And so what we wanted to do is make it as easy as possible for you to see that information, verify it's the right person, and use them, or know that you need to go create somebody else in the system. So first of all, the clinic side, as you notice here, what we call smart searching. If you automatically just hit a space in between parts of words, it'll automatically do a wildcard search for you in the system. So you can see I put command animal hospital in there. It floats to the top for you. You can also use account numbers. So if you have that routine person that comes in all the time, I can just put in their account number. It finds them as well. So it's going to search through both their account numbers and their name fields, trying to find it based on just what you're typing in here. And again, as I mentioned, we're also trying to show you a little bit more about that person, again, so you can verify. Because if you're doing something like a companion animal hospital, there may be multiples throughout the states that match that name in the system. So how do I quickly find which one it is that I am looking for? All right, so if maybe it is the one here in Athens, I want to click on that. Got a premise ID associated to them. The screen might jump a little bit depending on if they have a premise ID associated or not, and I can just scroll down there. Now, once you put in one person, it will start shortlisting it down. If there's a cross-reference system in the background, that as you build a sessions, it creates links between those clients, so it knows that this referring veterinarian or this producer grower go together. And so it'll automatically shortlist it for you without having to type anything. So if it is one of the common submitters, or if there's only one submitter for that person, it's going to be easy to find them, pick them, and just use them in the system. Again, also showing a little bit more information so you know it's potentially the right person or the right fax number or email address there for them in the system. Now, when we start looking at owners, that's hard, right? So let's just say there's some Smith in there. Well, there may be a million Smiths in the system. And is it a husband's name, first name? Do you even capture it or not? That's always a challenge with different owner type people in the system. So that's where the find add comes in. And you can use that on any level here, the find add. But the find add is a dialog box that pops up. Your session's still sitting there. It's not going anywhere. But this dialog is designed specifically where you can try to search for a client and or add a client on the fly. So the idea here is that I can just come in and I can just put in information about the client, and as I'm looking through, as I put more information in the system, it's going to kind of shortlist and kind of hop to the top if it finds those people in the system or not. So, is there a Pam Duke? There's not a Pam Duke in the system with that zip code, or maybe you're looking for a Smith or something in there. So you can cross-reference as much information, and it's a weighted search. So it's going to float to the top. The more things that match, if you get a name right, a zip code right, a phone number correct. So you can use a lot of those key things that you would normally look up in the system to identify. So again, if I was saying Pam Duke here is my wife, those that are interested. You can go ahead and continue filling in the information and just hit save if it is truly a new person. So if you feel like you haven't found the person you're looking for, you can come in and just fill out the information you have, fax numbers, email addresses here, and quickly determine, no, it's not an existing person. It's best I can tell. I'm going to just hit the save button, which will then add that person in, create the account and move them in right away. So again, to the question there in the chat, you can if you don't, you can make these things optional. So if you don't have owner, submitter, owner, you can leave that blank. Again, that's an optional field. You can leave blank and skip over it. So if you only have submitters a lot of times, you would just make that the person who's required at the top. There needs to be at least one person to pay the bill. So there's at least one required person because we do need a bill party in the system. But again, everybody else can be optional in the picture or on the accession. All right. And then the other optional piece here is a case coordinator. Again, something you can fill in later. It's not required at this moment. Then once you get those basic ID items filled in, you can hit save. And at this point, what it's going to do, it's going to lock in that accession number. It's reserved it. It's been associated to this case. We have the people involved here. And now at this point, I can, print labels if I want to go ahead and label up the documentation, the submission forms, things like that. You'll also notice it will show any alerts that are on those clients in the system as well. So if there's an alert on somebody, it's going to show up here on the right-hand side with a little indicator there who it's from. You can add your own custom icons in the system. So if you want it to be a big stop sign or alert sign or a dollar sign, you can do that. Um, and to answer the other question there, Stacy, in that find ad, it will search on phone numbers and mailing addresses. When you hit the find ad here, you can put in any of those things. So if you have a cell phone number, it will then search for that as well, trying to find that in the system. Obviously, my number's not in there. So it'll search on any of these fields, zip codes, phone numbers, and or name. It doesn't have to be just name. So you can start wherever you want to in this dialog box and look for people in the system. Um, so it doesn't have to be just name only. So now, also, if you want to, you can skip past this and come back to it later. You don't even have to fill it all in. When we say something's required, we're talking about required before the case finishes. So I can actually put the case in there, start it, get results in it even. All it's going to prevent is that if I go to try to finalize this session at the end of the process, if, say, the bill party has not been filled in, it's not going to let me finalize the case. So those requirements I'm talking about only really kick in at the very end of the process, because we don't want to delay other steps that may be going on. If you have a lab that likes to just get the labels on the specimens, get them to the lab, come back and add the bill party, come back and add other information, you can do that. So we try to allow you to start the process at any point that makes sense for your lab, depending on how your lab is structured. I've seen some labs that like to just get the case started, put the bare minimum in there. The lab sections are gonna add tests. Accounting people or data entry people come back and add clients. Again, you can do it whichever way makes more sense for your lab and how they process things. Now, until you have a bill party listed, the charges are not going to show in here. Just know that. And once you add your bill party, it can start auto calculating charges. So just because you don't see anything here, that may just be the fact that you don't have a bill party yet, because the bill party also dictates the pricing in some cases with discounts or other special pricing sets that you can do as well. So let's talk about the client a little bit before we jump on to the rest of it, before we leave the accession header. So if I go back here, let me just go back to my search screen here. I'll pull up the one I built earlier. Start. So another thing you can do is you'll notice in VetView, everything's a hyperlink here. So even when I was adding the accession, there was a little goggles, or now that it's already built, I can just click on the name of the client. It'll jump to that client's record. So on the client's record here, and you can go through the search screen like I did earlier, or you can hyperlink into it from an accession. So now I'm looking at the client. The first tab here, there's lots of information here, but the first tab is all about the description of the client's name, maybe some identifiers, account numbers. Account numbers can be changed. It just won't let you duplicate them in the system. So as we import your data in, we can preserve account numbers coming from your current system there. A short code is just like an abbreviation you can add there. If there's some, kind of quick access code you like to give certain clients, fine. Contact information is your how to con is fax, phone numbers, mailing address, things like that. And you can have as many of the fax numbers, any of these that you want. So you can have multiple email addresses, multiple fax numbers, cell phones, home phones, things like that. There's no limits on how many of those you add in the system. The only thing that's limited is we only let one mailing address, one billing address, one shipping address. You get the three different types there, but only one of those in the system currently. And now for each of the different contacts, you have options about what are you sending or doing with each one of those contacts. So for fax numbers, email addresses, or snail mail, you can set that the client is going to get their accession reports there, accounting reports like invoices and statements. VetView offers a sample receipt report if you want to turn that on. That's where they would get that receipt saying, yes, we got your accession there. And then there's also just a general communication flag, which that you can use for mail outs or other promotional information that you may be wanting to mine your system for those numbers and fax numbers, you can get those out using that flag. You can also turn that off if they're opting out of those things as well in the system. Again, you can have as many emails and fax numbers in the system, and you can send accession reports to all or any of those. There's no limits to how many reports we're sending out of the system at any given time. If you are doing snail mail and you say you're wanting to send an accession report, it'll actually email somebody internally saying this needs to be mailed out. It'll give them a copy of the report, the address that needs to be put on the envelope. And so it actually will send to an email box internally saying these things need to go out of the system. So you can do that as you can still flag those, even though the system is going to try to, it wants to automatically send those as the case is finalized. There's also in here, there is a portal. So we do have a client portal that's part of the VetView license that you can set up. Now, when you come to the portal tab, if they already have an account, there's a hyperlink that will take you to their account where you can see information about their portal account. You can also, if they call you and say, "Hey, I forgot my password," you can hit the reset send password. It'll create it'll auto generate a random password on their account and then send them an email with that random password with the instructions on how to reset it. If it's a new portal account, you can actually create a new welcome email. So we tried to do this to make it easy for you. If you are on a client record, and I'm just going to leave this room real quick. Let's say I create a new client record, just test tests, and they've got an email address. Now, email address, if you want to use this quick feature, you do need an email address in the system. I'm just going to save this and kind of show you. So, got a brand new client here. They call and they want a portal account, or you want to give them a portal account. So when you first come here, it's not going to show anything but if you have an email address in the system, so if I put email, and let's just put my email address. Oh, let's just do I might make up a fake one just to kind of get us going here. Say I've got an email address in there. I save it. Now, when I go to the portal account, it's going to say, "Oh, you have an email address. I don't have a portal account. Do you want to create a portal account?" So we tried to make it quick and easy for you to say, "Yep, I want to create a portal account for this client." One click, it's now got it's set that up for you using their email as their username. It's created a random password there that you can send them. They can get right in. Now, one caveat, when you create a web portal account, they don't get immediate access. There needs to be a portal administrator, somebody who's going to manage and improve these. Because people, if you want to turn it on, you can have people self-register as well. But if they self-register, we would need to know which client account that web portal account is linked to. So those are separated on purpose because this gives you flexibility that if you have somebody who maybe manages multiple sites or locations, or maybe it's a veterinarian, a state veterinarian that's managing different projects, you can link as many different internal client records to your portal account. So this is the portal management screen. It's also in the navigation down here. You can get to the portal management as well and manage those people. It's in where is it at? I lost my portal management. I may not have access to it. Oh yeah, here it is. Sorry, it's our administrator here. The web portal account management is the search screen where you can find those and set them up. If someone registers on the portal itself, it will send somebody in the lab an email saying this person's requesting a portal account. It lets them set up their username and passwords and everything like that, but somebody still needs to come in and link their internal account with their portal account. And you also have the flexibility to say, what can they do? Can they view their accession reports? Can they view their accounting information? Do you want to allow them to pay online? And can they submit requests through the portal? So you have control on what they can see, what they can do, and that's per portal account per client. So again, if it's the basic client, you probably want to turn them all on. If it's some special account where they're going to be seeing multiple clinics, it's like an administrator, but you don't want them to pay or see accounting information, you can do that as well in the system. But we try to make that quick and easy for you. There is other setups that you can do in the lab setup area of the system that your administrator can help you set up. There's a portal setup here where you can turn on what features you want. Do you want them to see your catalog of tests? Do you want to let them self-register or not? When you have a welcome email, you can create your own body here of what it is that you want to tell them in the email. There are wildcards that you can put in your email bodies or subjects. So it maybe puts their username in there or password. There's a little icon here that lets you show you all the wildcards you can use or placeholders that you can use in the emails or in the subject fields of the emails. So we have a welcome email, a reset password email, I forgot my username email that you can set up as well. You can also turn on the accounting, payment forms, things like that. So all that can be configured, turned on when you're ready there as well. Also part of the client record is the billing section. So this is part of what we'll cover this again on Friday in the accounting section. But this is where you can also turn on or adjust their billing mechanism for the client. We have three basic statuses: good, bad, and hold. Good, obviously, is the client's paying their bills, everything's great. We're going to give them accession reports, take new business from them, all the normal things. Bad is somebody that you don't want to do business with. It will prevent you from creating new accessions with that client. They won't be able to use the portal. They won't be able to get reports or anything like that. They are kind of locked out of the system until they've either rectified the issue or whatever the need is to let them go back to bold or to good status. Now, hold is kind of an in-between state. If you have a client who, for whatever reason, you want to have them prepay, or maybe they're on the edge of being, going to collections or something like that, you can put a client hold status. And what that does then is that every new accession that comes in with that client associated with that accession, it automatically puts that accession on hold. And what that refers to, going back to where we were earlier um, in the system, going back to the accession here, that's this hold flag here. If an accession is on hold, it'll allow you to create the accession. It'll allow you to do the work. It'll actually let the test go through and be resulted out. But when the case finalizes, we will not send the report out unless someone manually says send the report or you take the hold off. And so it's a way to kind of hold that report back until they've either done whatever it is you need them to do, prepay, or you want them to pay their current bill or whatever the need is there. Or maybe it's something like a legal case that you just do not want to get out of the system until somebody says, yep, it's good. We're going to release this case. Because anything on a hold status, you can't get the report either through any of the automatic mechanisms and also through the portal. So we don't let them see the report on the portal either. They can see it exists, but they can't get reports there. So hold is that kind of in-between state where there's some reason why you need to prevent them from or to hold that report back as leverage, you might say, to getting them to do something. Also in the billing section, there is what we call price sets. So price sets, as I mentioned earlier, you can have this is, as you notice, there can be a lot of these in here. It's customizable. But this affects your pricing schedule, you might call it, or price set we call it, where you can have different multipliers applied. So maybe you want to give researchers a 10% discount, or maybe there's educational accounts that you want to not charge. You can do whatever you want. It can be a percentage based, but you can also set that specifically. We'll cover more of that on Friday when we talk about accounting. But this is where you switch which price set does that client get. There's always going to be a default that's set up at the lab level. So whatever you call normal or regular pricing. Again, the name itself is changeable, but in the lab setup, you set which one is your default that every client gets when you're creating new clients. There's some other options here. Again, a lot of these talk about accounting. We'll touch those when we do the accounting on Friday, but this is where you can manage that billing. There's also the identifiers. Again, this is like your premise IDs, things like that. There's the linked clients and then the mappings. We don't really need to get into that. Those are things that, again, if you have problems, this is where you can find those, clean those up or change them. A lot of those things happen dynamically as you build cases. These things get linked automatically for you. You don't really need to manage those. Also in the client, you can see all the historical information, previous accessions, patients, their accounting information, clients and alerts. This is where you can make comments on a client, or if a client has a conversation and you want to log it, you can come in here, log the conversation with whoever, whatever that might have been. And then if it is something important, you can also flag it as an alert, which will then also put that up into the alert area that shows here, and it shows on the accession screen as you saw earlier. So you can flag comments or things as alerts as well. You can also then uncheck them at any point as well to turn off that alert if it's something temporarily. Um, And then also there's documents. You can attach documents to a client. Maybe there's approval forms or other things that you need to attach. You can do that as well. And also knowing that everything that leaves VetView, session reports, statements, invoices, anything that leaves VetView as an email, everything leaves an email, it will be logged in their alerts as well. So again, if you're getting phone calls from people asking about reports or asking about things, let me pull up another account, kind of show you an example of this. Yes, leave. So what you'll see in the log here is it's pretty verbose in the sense that it shows you when and what's where it went. So this is an example of when we sent a statement to companion animal pet vet is their email address here. It actually is a PDF that you can click on and view the actual PDF that was sent to them. It'll show who pressed the buttons, if it was a job or a person who did that. And again, it records all of that. So it can be accession reports, it can be statements, invoices. So if there are questions about, well, I didn't get my report, you can come here, see, yes, we sent the report on this day. Is this the right email address? So you can use it to verify email addresses, things like that, and or kind of see if it was maybe got caught in their spam filters. Did it actually leave VetView, but it got failed because the spam filter hit it? Something like that. It just helps you troubleshoot what went out of the system, what you sent them, and it's also a log that you can refer back to if there's questions about what was communicated to the client. The session is the same way. So if we go back to our sessions here, mm, 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 mm. So going back to our session now, the same thing is true here. You have an accession log, which is the same way. So you can write comments about an accession. You can flag it as an alert. So if you have a special scenario on a session, you can do that as well. But this is also where we will capture the same information. As accession reports leave the system, they get logged here, just like you saw on the client side. They get logged on the accession side for this specific accession that is being sent out. We'll talk about some of these other tabs later. Let's kind of dive in now to the accession body itself. So now building out the accession. So the basic case I'll walk through is the single patient. It's the kind of the most rudimentary one. It's the basics of adding stuff in. So in VetView, we have these major buttons across the top here of the session detail area. I like, obviously, they're kind of put in the order of progression typically. So single patient. So VetView can take environmental samples. So if you don't have a patient, it's not required. You can actually put in food or water or anything else like that and skip the patient. But a lot of times you are going to be starting with a patient. Now you'll notice these dialogues have more than just patient in it. And that's because as we were working with accession receiving people, we're trying to look at what do they commonly do every day. So, okay, typically I'm adding a patient, adding a specimen, at least one test. So that's the dialogue lets you start with the minimums, right? So let's say I have Fluffy. Now with what's required. So in a patient, the only thing that's required is some kind of animal identifier and a species. And you'll notice there as I type, and you probably can't see it because you can't see my hands, is all you need to do is put just enough in there to identify the word. If you put in only a partial of it, it's going to start shortlisting as I'm typing it here. And the more things I get right, the more shortlisted until it's unique. And then once it's unique, it's going to then auto select it for you, let you move on. You can also jump directly past species if you want to just put in, say, like Basset Hound or something, which I have. I can do that as well. It'll automatically backfill in the species for you. But the only thing that's required at the patient level is the species. Breed, color, sex, birth dates, all those things are all optional pieces of information that you can fill in now or later in the system. We also tried to make sure that all the keyboard navigation works. So you can tab through these things in a progression. It'll jump down to specimen, down to the catalog, and so on and so on. At the specimen level, the only thing that's required is the specimen type itself. Just tell us what kind of things it is. Again, this list, both the species list, breed list, colors, all these things are customizable. So just what you see here doesn't mean that's what ships. We will be importing in your client list, patient list, I'm sorry, your species, breed, sex list, your specimen list, even your test codes will be coming in from your current system. And you can modify those, you can inactivate them, change or update their names that will retroactively apply throughout the system. So again, you can put in whatever it is you need. Everything else is optional. Specimen type, the dates, labels, containers, sites, things like that, location. All those things are optional pieces of information that you can fill in. And then for the catalog or test, so one of the naming things we do is the catalog is what's orderable. The test is what you're performing. And so you may have catalogs that are panels or profiles, or maybe there's auto added stuff. You add a biopsy, it's going to automatically add a grossing or an H&E in there. But again, the catalog is what is orderable, and that's what the client probably is seeing on your online catalog and things that you may be looking for. So again, this may be, and you can, just like we're doing with client names, you actually don't have to start with the code. You don't have to, you can use the name or the test code. It can be the first word, any word in the system. You can do partial words if you wanted to, put in blood as well. You can shortlist things down. So say aerobic, blood, bottles, things like that. Again, it'll do a smart search of the system and try to help you find what it is you're looking for. Or maybe if it has like feline in the word, you can find all the things with feline there as well. So any of those things work there. Now, some of their dialog boxes will dynamically keep adding. So again, maybe common that if you're doing maybe a PCR, maybe you're going to do something else that is also say diarrhea. Maybe there's something else that you want to do as well. You can kind of keep filling it in there. And that's the basic part of it. Now, this dialog has one specimen. So let's say, for instance, I've got one patient, one specimen, my first set of tests. It's going to build it out when you hit save here. And then this is what we call the tree view. There are several different views you can use here. We'll talk about those in a second. But the basic view here is the tree view. And so as you add it, and I hit save on my dialog box, now I have my patient built. I have my specimen and I have my two tests. You'll also notice it's adding in questions here. So you can get to those questions from the dialog was on, or you can hit save. And this becomes your navigator now. So if I click on the patient, it's going to bring the patient information up over here on the right, where I can then update something, or maybe I need to go back and add something about the specimen, or maybe I want to answer questions here. I can click on this, becomes my navigator there, then I can then update or edit things there as well in the submission details. Now let's say they have another specimen, right? So you wouldn't go back if it's the same patient, same specimen. Now I'm just going to say add a specimen, select my patient. Now, you can do it a couple ways. If you press the button, you can then do it. Just make sure you select your patient there. Or you'll notice we have little like blue hyperlinks here that I can say, oh, I want to add another specimen. It'll automatically select whatever patient you're on, pre-selecting that for you going on. That can be useful if you are kind of having multiple patients and you're clicking and adding in different places as a way to do that as well. So let's say we have something else. Maybe we have some kind of miscellaneous swab. Again, we're going to just kind of put that in there and move down. Maybe I'm going to do a different, again, just really anything you want to pick here. You can just kind of scroll through, obviously pick what you want, hit save. There you go. And so now I have two specimens, one patient, two specimens, three tests. And that's how you kind of build out a basic session as a single animal there. Now, talking about statuses real quick, you'll notice it says it's in a new status and kind of a green bar up here. You'll notice each of the tests has a green bubble here. So an accession status goes through new status, the working status, finalized and addended. There's also canceled and review. But new status is trying to kind of in physical life, kind of modeling what we do. So a lot of times, and especially the way we traditionally have done it, you open up your box, you're building your session, you're entering information from the paperwork. The people in the lab, the sections, we don't need to be finding these tests yet because they're still in the session receiving area. They're not in their lab area yet. They're not able to work on those yet, potentially. And so the new status means that you're still building out the case and no one's going to find it in the lab when they look at like say test search. So actually when you're done with that and you're ready to release it to the lab and put results in, you just hit the release button here at the top. It'll change it to a working status. Everything is in red. The only difference now is if I click on that test, now I'm seeing the result area itself. So results are now built out. People can now enter results in. It's going to be found on the test search screen, things like that. Now, if it's in a working status, that doesn't prevent you from still adding more information. So if you say you have another test you need to add, you can just click on it, put in whatever, maybe we also need to do a CBC. You can do that. You can add whatever you need to. So just because it's in the working status doesn't prevent you from anything. It just indicates, are the results built out? Is it going to be found on the test search screen or not? And that's the main difference there in the statuses. And it'll automatically put any new test in the working status you notice there for you if it's already in a working session. All right. So let's talk a little bit about now doing multi-animal cases. Obviously, doing this one by one would be very taxing, right? If you have 40 animals all coming in, say maybe you had 40 cow samples, serum samples from cows that you're going to do BVD on. Well, that would be very slow to come in here and enter one by one by one by one. That's obviously not very efficient. And so let's kind of do kind of what a large case process might be. And again, you can kind of pick and choose which processes work best for you. So I like to start here. There's a lot of ways to accomplish this, and that's on purpose. So each person may find what works best for them for the scenario that they're putting in here. So let's say I start with cow. I'm just going to start with a basic bovine there. And let's say I've got a blood sample, blood, and I'm going to do BVD 1. Let's say I'm also going to do BVD 2. They want both of those done on each of it. Now, the first option is you can just say duplicate. All right, so let's just say I'm just going to say 10 for right now. So I would say I want 10 version, 10 copies of this. So I got 10 animals, each animal having one blood sample, two serum, or two of those. You can just hit save there with duplicate 10 at the bottom. And now it just did that. It built out 10 patients, 10 specimen, 20 tests. And from there, you can then come back and then add more. Let's say I've got another specimen. Maybe they gave a serum as well, and we're going to do something else. You can come in and now say add test or add specimen, select off all 10 of my cows again, put in, maybe I got serum in this case, and I'm going to do some other test. Bovine. Maybe we're going to do also the coronavirus on those as well. And I can add multiple tests here, just like you see. I can also pick and choose. So maybe it isn't for all 10 of them. Maybe it's only for the ones in the middle. You can do that and it'll save that out. And now you'll notice here at the bottom, it says that um, I've got 10 patients, 18 specimens, and 28 tests. And so again, you can build that out that way as one way of doing it and kind of moving that around, picking and choosing. You can just right click there. I would encourage you and invite you to right click in different places because there may be menus that we had to hide or kind of put in there to save space. But if you need to delete something out, you can delete it. You can also duplicate. And so that's the other way you could do this as well. And let's just do another one here to show you. So let's say I'd rather do it this way. Let's say I start with my cow again, bovine, blood, BBD1, BBD2, save it, add my specimen, do serum, and let's say I'm gonna do bovine. Sure, this one. So now what I've done is I built that one patient, two specimens, three tests, and now I want to come up here and just right click on the patient and say duplicate. And I can now say, well, I want to make, I've got, 10 patients again, like I did before. I want to duplicate it 9 times. Now you do have to remember you already have one, so just duplicating it 9 this time. And hit duplicate, and it'll do the same thing. Same process, just a different way of getting there. Same thing, we have 10 patients, 20 specimen, 30 tests to get it in quickly. Now, that's great, except you're probably going to have different tube numbers or patient identifiers. When you duplicate or replicate, it's just going to tag a number at the end of it there. So obviously, updating that again would be taxing to go in and click on each patient, find their name, update it. So that's where these under other options you have edit multiple patient, edit multiple specimens come in. So now once you have your basic 10 patients here, you can come in here and say edit multiple patients. And now we give it to you in a list format where you can come in and you can now, and this is really useful if you do get barcodes on, a piece of paper. It's really easy. You can come in, again, don't forget to right click. You can say, paste all. And now if I had a barcode scanner, I could be hitting the barcode scanner automatically filling these in for me. Or I can come in and type them in myself. We also do arrow keys and tabs, more like a spreadsheet here to let you move around and do those things in there. Um, and so to answer your question there, yes, you can add in specimens without tests. So again, just kind of a new example here. Same thing is true. If I wanted to, I can, and this is actually a good segue into also another way of building it is you can import in from a spreadsheet. So we also offer that as another option up here is you can import in from a file. But to answer your question specifically, yes, you can come in and say, I want to add a patient dialogue, and you don't have to fill it all in. So maybe I want to do fluffy again, feline. I can stop right there. I can just put a patient in. Or maybe I can come in and say I've got Fido, my dog, and I've got blood, and stop there. I don't have to finish that dialogue. It's just giving you the quick and easy ability to fill it all out if you want to. Again, we do environmental samples, so you could just say I've got some food and I'm gonna just, cheese. I actually hit cheese here. And I'm just to stop there. So again, I can mix and match. However, again, patient's optional. You can put that in there without it there. You can do um, now tests do need a specimen that is required. You can't add a test without a specimen, but you can add a specimen without a patient, and you can also just add specimens and stop there. And that leads me into my, like I said, the other example I wanted to show you is importing from a spreadsheet. So I have a dummy spreadsheet here. It's a CSV file, but you can edit those in Excel. So if a client is giving you a spreadsheet of information, and in this spreadsheet, I have just species, sex, specimen type, a label, and the test they want. The other thing about that view in there, the importer is that you don't have to have, again, just like before, I'll do a couple of these. You don't have to have test even. So it's a wizard you walk through. So let's kind of walk through it now and kind of show you an example of it. Um, so under other options, import from file, I choose my file. So I'm going to go over here and choose, I got it on my desktop, import. It's going to show you a preview of your file. Make sure you've got the right file. You go to the next. It Now it's going to ask you each column in the spreadsheet, what does it match up to in VetView? It tries to do it by the name, but doesn't always know. It shows you what's in the file and then asking you what is it going to be inside of VetView. So again, like it's a wizard you walk through. You mapping things up. You can also ignore. There is an option to just discard the column or ignore the column if it's information you don't want to import in, or you can have it bring it in as well. It'll then show you those. If there are anything that doesn't match up, it gives you a chance to fix them here in the little wizard. And then as you go through, it'll show you what it's going to build. It's going to, in my example here, so going back to my spreadsheet, I actually have 5 males with only one BVD. I have then 20 females where I did a BVD1, but then I also have the same 20 females with BVD2. So same specimen, same patient. The wizard's smart enough to know that. It's going to build 25 patients, 25 samples with 45 tests overall. And you can then just say import and confirmation there. And then it's going to go in and read that file in and build that out in VetView the same way. So again, it's a little wizard you walk through, but to show you, to answer your question as well, let's say they only give you just test information or no test information. They don't have that column, or maybe they don't give you, again, you could do as minimum as you want to. We'll do the minimum example. Maybe all I'm getting is the patient name because that I have bovine written here. Well, sorry. Insert. um, Yeah, it's already there. So maybe they only give you um, some kind of identifier for the animal, what kind of animal it is, what kind of specimen it is. You don't even have to have that. You could just do patient if you wanted to. Again, it's a wizard that's going to walk through and build out whatever you get. So let's just do it with these 3 columns here. So again, session, import. Templates sees the 3 columns, match those up. Next, next, import. Yes. And so again, you don't have to have even the test here in this case. So again, now at this point, you could come in, say add test, select them all, add my BVD this way, right? So again, if maybe they just give you a spreadsheet of all the names, you can then come in, add the test in to the list as well. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this. Again, using the duplicate feature, using just the duplicate at the time you enter it, duplicate later. adding a test or a specimen and then selecting it through the little selector here. Say I want to do all, or maybe I can go through and pick and choose which ones I'm adding it to. A lot of different ways you can build out that accession there, answer the questions. Now the questions can be at the catalog level, but you can also have questions at the accession level, patient level, or specimen level. So if your lab likes to collect history information or other information, you can set up these questions at any level in the system and it'll ask appropriately. So if you say, well, I want to ask for a history at the top, you can have that sitting there by default, or you can come in, I have to spell it right, history. You can even have it by default, but it'll ask it just once. It'll be at the top of the accession here in the tree where you can put in your sessions there. You can also attach information to VetView. So if you have, say, a submission form, you want to submit in, or maybe they emailed you other documentation that can be attached there. VetView has an automatic uploader feature that we talked about in the last session that can be done as well. But there's lots of different ways to do it. I also mentioned, I talked about the edit multiple patients. Edit multiple specimens is the same concept, but it allows you to look at the specimen level, add in information, or maybe you have that, again, that barcode reader that lets you fill in using a barcode scanner to fill in that information as well. And there's also the right click option. So let's say there is a sample date that you want to set for the 14th. Maybe there's no time. You want to just copy that down, paste to all. You can do that as well to kind of update things quickly. Or maybe you want to say paste to selected. So there's a selected option. Maybe you want to say this one, and this one are, some condition or container. Maybe it was frozen somehow and you want to say paste to selected. So there's some options there to let you kind of come in and do things in fast. So paste all blank ones. There you go, and then just save that and it'll update that information on each of the different specimens in the system as well. So there's lots of different options there. Now, the other big thing that I would recommend is if you're not already doing it, is getting barcode labels on every specimen. And when I say barcode labels on every specimen, it needs to be the actual specimen barcode, not a generic accession barcode. So VetView assigns like a serial number to each specimen. That's this S number we say here. And that's typically by default on our specimen label. You'll see that S number there. That's what's inside the barcode. That's how, again, that's a unique number just to that specimen. It's like a serial number that you're going to add. You can also add your own number in the label, but for interfaces and other things, specimen tracking, it's going to be looking for the VetView specimen number there. But adding labels. So in the accessioning process, you can automate labels if you want to, or there are also quick ways of doing it. As you notice here, I can right click and say print specimen label, or at the top here, I can come in and we offer multiple types of labels really at every level. But the three main ones that you're going to use most are going to be the accession label for all your paperwork, and then the specimen label for each physical specimen you get, you can put a label on it. And then in bacteriology, they use the pattern labels for each of the different plates that they're growing out so they can identify those, get the patterns back in there. Those are the three main labels. But we offer patient and test as well if you want to use that for whatever reason you need to. Maybe you have a necropsy and you want to put a patient label on the actual body. You can actually have a patient label that may look a little different than the specimen itself. Again, lots of different uses there. But if you say at this level, at the top level, I say I want to use specimen labels, it's going to give you all the specimen labels, allowing you to press them or print those 25 labels out in one easy button there. We do offer network printers so that there will be buttons here. If I'm in a demo system, so I don't have any network printers attached to my demo system. But if there were network printers, there would just be buttons here that you could press and it would send it to that printer wherever it lives in your lab as well. And again, you can have multiple different types of labels as well as earlier, just like I was talking about the accession report, where you can have multiple versions of the accession report. You can also have multiple versions of every report in VetView. So maybe you have a smaller submission label. Every report in VetView can be customized. You can make it different sizes, different shapes, different content there. Maybe you don't want to use barcodes. Maybe you want to switch to QR codes. That can be done. It's all part of our free editor that's part of VetView that you can do that, make those adjustments in the system, either add them as an override or an alternate, or you can make it the default that happens when you just press the buttons. You can also turn on in VetView to have it auto print for you. So that's one of the options you can do under lab setup. If that's what your decision is, there is what we call event setup here, where you can come in and say, when I release the session, for instance, that's the event, pressing the button that says release a session. I want to print reports for all the sections. And again, the report could be a worksheet or it could be your specimen labels. Again, it's not specific to what it is you have to do. Let's say I'm doing specimen labels, that view specimen label there, and you can even specify a default printer. Now, each user would have the ability to override that. So each user, typically, if you're at a workstation, once you set up the event, the user will be able to find that in their user profile under Manage Automatic Printing. They would be able to set up their own printer that they maybe are sitting at. So typically, a lot of people have dedicated workspaces. Maybe they have or a sessioning area. There's a printer sitting right next to it. You can do that as well. There are no technical requirements in VetView for printers. It's any printer that you can set up on your server. So if you're using Linux through cups or Windows using Windows Print Server, so Zebras, Dynamos, all of them these days we can connect to them. And what we're printing is a PDF file, so all those printers can accept PDFs and print them out. We haven't really run into any printer that doesn't work that way. So we do a lot of them do use Zebra still for your thermal transfers or heat transfer. But again, you can use any you want to. All right. So back here. Okay, so printing out labels, again, you can do it one by one. You can also do it in mass up here through the printing labels. You can have it auto printing. Those are something that you want to do. And again, as you notice, this is still in the new status. I don't even have client build parties. Again, that doesn't prevent you from getting your labels out because that's an important part of getting that out, getting it labeled quickly. Some labs, do all the work in front and then only send the samples back to the lab when everything's been entered. Some labs get the bare minimum in there, get the label on it, let it go back to the lab. Lab will enter, the technicians might enter in even the test codes or other information. But again, we let you generate those. As soon as you add that specimen to that case, you get your unique barcode or a serial number assigned to it. You can now print labels to it and things like that. So let's go back to the PowerPoint here and see if there's anything I missed. All right, so a couple of things here. The view options, I mentioned that earlier. Let me switch. Let me go ahead and release this one. So again, we try to make things customizable in the system. Even the way this little bottom area looks. If you are doing bigger herd cases, obviously kind of scrolling through all this can be kind of taxing. We also have to limit this to only 10 records per page. That's called paging here. That's a performance thing that we have to build in to make sure that large cases still work efficiently. And that may not be the best way for you to view things. And so one of the options up here in the view options is changing this lower panel down here from what we call the accession tree view. Let's say we'd rather do it in a list view. So again, it switches that view. Now each row represents a single test. So again, this doesn't work well if you're not assigning tests. So if you're only putting specimens in, this is not a very good view. But again, if you are putting that information in there, it allows you to, as I click on it, it is opening up because it is working here, it's actually showing me the result area. So your technicians might find this useful because they can actually come in here, click on it, did there. You'll notice there's a little icon here for questions. I can click that. It'll open up that question area for you to enter into. You can still add patients and specimens even in this view. So just because you're in the view doesn't turn off the ability to add or edit this information. It just changes the way we're displaying it on the screen. Our paging changes. We can actually offer you more per page in this view because it's more of a condensed view on the screen. But again, it doesn't prevent that. You do have what we call pancake menu that lets you then edit specific things or get to the menu easier as well. Again, you can still do all the things we were doing before. It just is in a different view there. And then the third view is the worksheet view. And this is really beneficial for more of your technicians than it is for session receiving, because what it does is it builds it in this view for you, similar to the test view, but now the results are all in line like a spreadsheet. So they can actually come in here and result it out from this view as well. If it is in a new status, it will still show you the information this way. It just all the results will be blank because the results don't exist yet until you release it. And there's also filters down here at the bottom. So if you had multiple test codes, you can filter on those at the bottom as well in that view. So test view, same thing. We've got different filters in there. Now, in the tree view and the test view, you can also flop it left and right because as you noticed in the tree view here, kind of going back to the original one, this is your navigator and it lets you move and see as you click on things what you get in the edit panel. And in session receiving, you typically would probably want this here because you're going to be building out the case, navigating around. This is what you may be editing on the right-hand side. Maybe you'd rather have it flip-flopped. You can swap these panels as well. Maybe you want the navigator on the right-hand side and the entry on the left-hand side here where I can then still use the navigator but it now just changes which side it's on. Same thing with the list view. You can have the list on the right, entry on the left. Again, your preferences there. Just don't forget to hit save if whatever you like as your default view, you can save that. That's a personal preference there in the system. The other thing that the worksheet and test view offers that's a little different than tree view is you can also customize the columns that are visible. You can change the columns that are visible, move them left and right, remove them, reset them as well. So maybe you don't use, and this is a user preference. So maybe the users don't really care much about the patient's name. Maybe it doesn't matter to them. They can actually remove that column. Maybe they would rather see something else. Maybe they would rather see the sample date or the status or the test code here. They can add that in as well. Or maybe you'd rather see test codes than test names. Again, you can move those left and right, save them as your own personal preferences. That is a user preference there in the system. Um, so to answer your question about printing labels from multiple sessions, we don't have that ability right now. I don't think we do. Yeah, no, we don't have that. Oops, didn't mean to click on that. Yeah, so we don't have mass printing of labels because typically that's been done when you're building it, releasing it, you would print the labels, not doing it one by one. And that's where I would encourage you to do it as you're building the cases, not coming back later and trying to do something else in mass. But right now you don't. You have to go into each session and print the labels from there. So. So a barcode is just so this is the thing about barcodes. Barcodes are only a simple identifier. Any barcode that you scan in the grocery store and everything like that. But what you can do is in the bar up in the top right corner is a quick search up here, and I can scan my barcode up here and hit enter, and it's going to take me to that case with that specimen filtered down to it. So it does filter that down by that specimen barcode. So it will jump you directly to that case with that specimen filtered down to it so that you can view it quickly in that sense. So this little quick search up here can be an accession number, it can be a specimen barcode, it can be any of the barcodes that we generate in VetView. You can scan that right here in the top right corner or enter it in the top right corner, and it's going to jump you to that in the system where you can see any and all details about the barcode. But the barcode itself only has this number embedded in it. And that's what, like most barcodes, they only have a single identifier embedded in the code itself. It always has to reference it from some other system in there. But yes, that's what you can do. Again, using that up here, you can quickly jump to that as well. All right. Um, what else do I have on my list? Oh, administrative functions. And the last thing is administrative functions. What I mean by that is kind of going across the tabs up here. Logging is outgoing messages. Don't need to worry about that. You can relate accessions together, or if there are for some reason accessions that you want to tie together, that's an option you can do there. We talked about document adding, charges. If I were to add let's kind of talk real quick about editing this information at the top here. We call that the header. So if you just say edit header, you can come back in just like we were doing before. I can fill in whoever I want to fill in. Companion animal, caps lock on. Um, yeah. And yeah, again, I don't even need to have owner if I want to. Save that. But as soon as I put in my bill party, it's going to automatically then update. And now I have charges built out for me. So now I can see, session fees, charges, things like that. So again, once you put your build party in there, charges can be edited. I don't know if it's something you do in a session receiving or not, but if you do need to modify that, you can edit these, change the bill party here. So and you can change test by test, you can change who pays for something. So if you have reportable stuff that needs to be billed to the government, you can change that or maybe other things like that. You can also change the bill party as a whole, either from the contacts tab, you can right click and say set this person as the bill party. You can also do that from the edit headers. You can just change the toggle button as well. That does the same thing. But you can switch the bill party as a whole. So I can change all of the charges to this bill party, or I can come one by one and say that one thing needs to go back to Companion Animal Hospital, and it'll actually show you the differences there. It'll also, if the prices were different based on that price calculations, it would show you the differences there. You can also edit the price manually. If you, for some reason, this needs to be $15 because of whatever reason, you can do that. Everything is logged in the system as well. So, signing a section to a session isn't really a thing in VetView. Now, that being said, you can use accession tags. I've seen labs use the accession tags as a way to say this is a cytology accession or this is a pathology or whatever section you want to. So you can use the tagging system as a way to classify something as a sections accession if you want to. But the system automatically, it doesn't, you can have multiple tests on a session and it'll automatically know the cross-reference there, but sessions are not section assigned in that sense. So, so when you're looking for a test, let me put back, if I go here to test search, um, so again, it will find it. I can say I want to find every case that's in cytology here. I can just do it this way, and it'll find every accession that has cytology associated to it, and so on. You don't need to use the tags to find it if you do it this way. If you want to say, if you use the accession tags, then you would go to the accession search screen and say, okay, I want to find everything that's flagged as a, cytology case in this example, which I didn't actually tag that case, but so you can use the session tags as a way to saying like, a section is involved or some other key reference there. But typically, once you assign a test to it, that's how you would manage that, like finding all the cases through the, say, the test search screen on find everything that say cytology is and has on it that is working. And you can do it by status here. Or you can come back even and look at finalized if you really want to use it this way to look for finalized things as well. So,
Jeff, the widget would be another way to manage that.
yeah, and true. Thank you, Shauna. And back on the home page, there's also a test search widget, specifically that you can add. Each user can add to theirs, and in that you can actually assign which sections or workstations you want to monitor as well. So, like if you kind of going back to our example here, if I wanted to say I want to watch everything in cytology, I can just add that and I can stop at whatever level, lab, section, workstation, or down to the individual test code, add that there in the same way. It'll give me a quick reference to all the cytologies that are working in the system per se. So it's just another way of finding it. So again, we don't associate a section to an accession. The sections are determined by the tests that are being added to it. So that's the basics as I want to kind of go through. I think I didn't hit administrative function. Sorry, I was getting there, but I didn't get fully through it. Um, so the last one is the administrative functions. Now, understanding that VetView is fully role-based, and so you may not have any of these options, but there is options at administrative level that will let work on the session as a whole, deleting it out of the system, which is something you typically don't do unless it's truly a mistake that will delete all evidence of it out of the system. Again, it's a purely administrative cleanup thing. But this is also where you can cancel it once it's been finalized. If you need to just update a contact header, but you don't want to refinalize the case, you can do this. And there's different things here. You won't have to go through each one of them. I think they're self-explanatory, but each one of these buttons is a privilege that you can give people to operate on the session either while it's working or maybe when it's finalized. Because once it's finalized, it locks down everything in the system. You can't add any tests or edit any tests. You can't remove tests or change the header once it's been finalized Billing is still open because that's something on the accounting side they might need to work on. But as far as the test itself, the results, those things are locked down in the system. But this is where the administrative tools come in for unlocking or doing something at a higher level. Again, that's all privilege based in the system. Identifiers is a place where you can add things like premise IDs and things and link them against the case when it comes to reportables or other identifiers that you may want to collect. It's very flexible. You can have it be more than just premise. It could be other identifiers that you may need to be collecting outside of the question and answers as well. All right, so a couple other screens that I want to jump to. Let's talk about other ways that you can accession or create accessions in VetView as well. So the first one is the request screen. So with the portals and other interfaces, there is the need for incoming, we call them requests for testing coming in from electronic sources. And again, it can come from three sources currently. And again, there is an interface that lets you have other sources. There is one that we're working on currently for a lot of y'all on the call for Easy Vent will be one of the ones on the list. It'll actually be what I'm calling hospital here. That will be your Easy Vet connection to your teaching hospital that you were connected to. But you can also do portal requests from maybe referring veterinarians as well. But the three main sources here. So the request filter, the request area is a queue. So as a user goes on the portal, creates a request on the portal and submits it, it's going to sit in this queue waiting for that package to show up. And once it shows up, you should be able to find it through one of the request identifiers and then just turn it into an accession. So kind of walking through one of those real quick. Let's go through our portal first. So this is one of our test portals I've got set up here. Again, each user would have their own username and password there. So I've got my just test account here and I log in. So this is our basic portal. Across the top here, they have the things that they can do. There's the catalog. It shows them all of the test offerings that you have. They have a basic search that they can use for maybe they're looking for some keyword through your catalog. They can actually click on it, view more information about that catalog. We talked about this in a previous session where you set this information and manage it inside VetView. But there's also where they can see all of their submissions, all their sessions that are in process. They can be working, finalized, addended, and this allows them to preview that report and whatever state it's in. As I mentioned previously, that it doesn't show anything that's in a working status. It shows that we have a case and it's in working, but when I preview my report, it's not going to show working results. It's not going to show that half-written necropsy report or the tentative results of some PCR until the technician finalizes that test, then it becomes visible. Or there's a specific area where you can flag it as preliminary and that would make it visible on the report. So they're not going to ever see any results that are in a working status. But they can print that at any point. They can also click on the little binoculars there, get more details if there were attachments or other information. They could view that as well. They can also download any, there'll be a little attachment icon that shows up if you've put attachments on the case. And then there is also the accounting. If you want to turn that on, they can see their accounting, their AR history. So statements, invoices, payments they've made, any finance charges that might have been applied or adjustments that have been applied. All that would show here. It's a running tally of their AR history. It does default to like the last several months. So if you undo the search, you can even look backwards. It's retroactive. It'll show them their complete history there of their AR as well. There is a small payment submittal form here on the right. If we are connected to a third-party payment processor, VetView itself does not process checks or credit cards, excuse me. We have to tie into some other payment processor, Tyler or PayPal or one of the other providers out there. That's where the user would just use this as a jump off point. They would say, okay, I want to pay $100 or whatever it is, and it's going to jump out to whatever that third party system is that you may be connected to. Again, you can turn on and off that if you don't want to make that available to everybody or anybody in the system. The last one is the request area. So they have the ability to um, I don't know about Converge. We would need to talk about that, and we need to have a conversation about what that is and how it works. I can't answer that right now. Um, So in the request area, this lets them see requests that are in the system. So request will turn into a sessions, but before it turns into a session, this may be something they've submitted, but we haven't received yet. So this gives them a little bit of an update or a status that there's something in the works. You can also find that same submission on the VetView side as well, but this is also where they can create a new request. Come in there. Now we give them some options here. We'll talk about those other options in a second. They're called templates, but we give them the basic single patient, multiple patient there. So in this request, they can come in and it will automatically know based on their login, one of the people, either it's a clinic or an RDVM or owner. And then they could come in and either update information about a particular doctor that they're submitting for them. They can add doctors, they can add owners for you all electronically. And then down here at the bottom, they would come in and add their information, very similar to like we've been doing inside of it. It's just it tried to make it a little simpler for the client to fill in their information, what tests they're doing. So if they're doing some kind of canine, respiratory, or something other there, you can in your catalog setup, which we won't really go into today, you can also limit which specimens are defaulted or automatic for them there. There's ways to limit that down. It does present them the questions that need to be filled in. You can make them required if you want to or not. And can add multiple tests here and keep going. Just like we were doing inside the system, they have a lot of similar options here as well. And then once they submit that, they can even upload files and stuff. But when they submit that in the system, they get a report that they can print out and put in the box with their samples. And you know, it says a barcode appear, the request number, which is the barcode. Again, that goes in the box. And then when it comes into the lab, if I go back to the lab side, that will automatically sit in this queue. So here's FIDA, the one I just created. It'll just sit here in the queue waiting for the box to show up. Now, if you have the form, you could scan that barcode right here just by typing in that reference number, 2604, and it will find it. So no matter where it is in the list, it'll just jump to it. So you can scan that form. It'll jump to that case for you. You can either just select it and accept it right here, or you can click on the binoculars, kind of see again more information about it, see what they submitted, things like that. But the ultimate thing here is that you're just going to accept that. It'll give it a session number, and then you can save it, and it immediately jump you in. You have a working accession now based on what they submitted on the portal. You can then make adjustments. So if they submit one thing and you call them up and say that's not the right test code, we recommend you do something else. Again, you can add tests, remove tests, or cancel tests with a reason in there as well, updating that request once it's been accepted in the system there. So, and there's also other mappings and things as well. If so not out of date or out of range, but you can set in your catalog, as I mentioned earlier, in the catalog, you can set what are appropriate specimens. So if you have I'm using one of the reportable diseases is a common thing here. You can set at the catalog level, you can say what specimens are allowed and restrict that down, or you can say filter it so they know what the recommended ones are versus all the others. But so you can do that. We don't have a date range though, as far as like say how old it is. That's something we don't have in the system. Um, Right. And so that's the request. So going back to here, the request is, like I said, it's the queue for all incoming things from the portal. Once we have the EasyVet connection through the hospital, those would show up here as well. Again, waiting for that sample to come from the hospital, be delivered to you, whichever way it's coming, either by courier or being dropped off. Again, that way you're not building accessions, you're not building things that may never show up. It's sitting here waiting to see if it shows up or not. And then you can also reject those or cancel those if they never show up. You can cancel them out, filter by that, other things. One of the other avenues is, for example, GVL. So Global Vet Link. I don't know if you have interfaces with them or not, but if we have an importer from Global Vet Link as well, I have an example case that I stuck away here. So the way GVL works, when you get the GVL submission form, there is a EIA number or a container number that's on the form. You can type that here and just hit search. It's going to look up, it's going to actually go to Global Vet Link and look that case up. see if that case exists and if it's in a good status, and then you can say import. In the same way, it's going to build in the request. Now, also built in the request module is a mapping system. So quarter horse in my test system, we've never mapped quarter horse as a breed of a horse. So now I can come in here and decide what do I want to do. Is it a new breed? Probably not. I want to find quarter horse in here. Um, uh, not finding, not sure why it's not finding that right now. We will just leave that blank for now. Um, And so you can build in maps. You can also decide if you want to update information or not. The default from GVL is not to update the clinic or the RDVM. What we found historically is GVL, that information sometimes isn't uh, always up to date, or if they do typos, there's no spell checking and or checking on their side. And so we have some default actions here. Basically, you're seeing what's coming in, and we're saying don't update the record. If you do want it to update the record, you could say update the record here, and save that in, and it will actually update with any incoming information. You can decide if you want to update or not. And then again, once you're done, you just say accept, and it will actually then build out that accession for you, updating the client record if you asked it to. And then from there, you can then do it. Now, with Global Vet Link, as you put your results in, it's going to then also communicate back to Global Vet Link the results of that EIA as well in the system. So that's another source there. And as we continue to build in other interfaces, this is the queue where all that's going to hold. There is an API that we have for this that if you want to build your own custom importer from another source, that's also something we make available for your IT professionals can actually use our interface and setup to find the API of how they can actually inject requests directly in the VetView from another source. The USDA Noun project will also come in here as well. Those will now be populated once the test orders start being used more every day. Those will show up here as well. This is the incoming queue for any electronic messaging coming into VetView. All right. So, one of the other things I kind of skipped over, we talked about a little bit in request, is the Accession templates. So, one of the other options for building accessions is the template itself, and that's this little drop down right here. Again, the basic one's just called regular. It's going to go to the next screen like you saw before. But in VetView, a lot of us have specialized tests that we do a lot of, like EIAs, or maybe there's certain reportable diseases that we need to have certain requirements met. And so this template allows you to kind of build in other requirements or default in values automatically for you. Because a lot of times what we run into, specifically with reportable diseases, is that in this example, so USDA Wildlife AI for the Noun project, we have to have a reference case number, even if it's going to be NI. We have to put something in that field, or else it's going to fail when it goes to USDA. And so you can actually change the label on the screen. You can give them little instructions of where that number should come from. It should be on the paperwork. And also, if you want to say it should be NI or whatever, in that way, it's also required. They're not able to go past this unless they fill in the required. Now, as mentioned earlier, they weren't required previously, but because I'm using a template, I can set things are required that maybe weren't required previously, or add in additional information. Like let's say I want to add the USDA clinic account every time, I can do that in the system. You can also set species and breed filters, other things that may be required in the system that normally wouldn't be required. Someone would have to remember to go fill that in or add that thing in the system. It makes it easier to give this to an every, because that's the thing with especially reportable diseases, we have to think about in what they call the wartime, or in a case of an outbreak. You may be asking people to step in and do receiving that aren't as familiar with the rules. What do I need to fill in? Where does it go? Where do I find it? Things like that. And so under the lab setup screen here, there's a whole section where you can go through, set up these accession templates, and you can make as many of these as you want. And then inside of each one of these, you can go through each of the different sections, filling in what do you want to require. Maybe there's additional contacts. Maybe you want to change the case number field, maybe add a note to it. You can actually even add instruction set that, talks about what it is you need or what the expectations are. But then the other thing is you can push this to the portal. So it can be used internally and it can also be used on the portal so that, again, if you're trying to set up common testing or maybe it's a surveillance program or other a regulatory program that you want and there are certain rules around it, you can go through, turn on or off what you want to ask for, what's required, what do you want to filter down to. All that can be set up through the templating system. Again, even used internally and or on the portal. You want to make that available. So this is another option, another way to build out a session out with certain requirements that may, again, adding requirements into the system. Let's see. And one of the last things, I talked a little bit about attachments and notes, so we won't cover that. But the last thing I want to cover today is the quick accessioning. There's another form that we've added recently called quick accessioning. So one of the and this is something we're going to be continuing to add on to in the future is different ways, different workflows that you may be trying to support. This started out as actually just a small internal project to my team, but then we stretched it out and made it part of the actual system. So what this is doing, the quick accessioning form is actually what I noticed in looking at labs is a lot of labs have high volume testing and there's certain tests that they do a lot of. And there may be like for one example that I like to use is EIAs, right? So we do a lot of EI, especially here in Georgia. When we work real closely with the Athens Diagnostic Lab. That's one of their high volume tests. I think it's like 30% of all their sessions are EIAs or something like that in certain periods of the year. And they're always exactly the same thing. Your equine, serum, EIA, things like that. And so what this screen was designed around was the workflow that I can't take credit for is I learned this from originally from Wisconsin, but then later Dr. Akey was a big believer in this, which is the dirty versus clean environment and getting things labeled efficiently and quickly in a dirty environment. And then that way people can sit in a clean area and fill in the rest of the information. And then also putting labels on stuff very quickly and getting it back to the lab section. So this whole screen is designed around putting in the minimum information to get things labeled and get it to the lab as quick as possible. It's a big button system. It's designed to be like on a touchscreen computer that you might have, say, in your receiving area. And the idea is that you can come in, imagine I'm pressing the buttons with my finger here. I can say, well, I've got a canine urine. We're going to do a urinalysis on it. Or maybe it's not, maybe it's blood instead of urine. Let me just reset that. I hit the wrong buttons. So canine, just say blood. We're going to do a profile on it, right? And then I can just hit save. And now what it did is it built this session in the background. It auto printed out labels for me, and it is the minimum information. If I go to that accession, you'll find that I have a basic accession, no client information, canine, serum sample with the profile on it. It's the minimal information I need to get the sample labeled and get it to the lab, and the lab can start processing that sample. And later, people can come in and add in client, clinic, and other information like that. So the whole idea behind the screen may not be useful for you, but the idea is if it's something you're interested in, it's a screen that you can do again just for that. You can also program these buttons. So each button here you can pick, because that's the other thing I notice a lot of times in labs, you go in there and look at that. There are typically, you may have 1,000 different species, or let's say 100 different species, 2,000 different breeds and stuff in the system. But you'll probably find that, 80% of all your cases are only on these major species. And then on the specimen types, you may find that, say, 60, 70% only have to do on, say, 10 or 12 different specimen types. And then you have, say, 50% of all your testing is a handful of different catalog items. So that's the idea here is you can come in, you can order these and different, and which ones are the most common things there. You can also pre-associate specimen types and species if you want to. The idea being here is that I can come in, say, like EIA, with one click. I can actually, or two clicks, I can build an EIA session very quickly, get it in, go now. I don't have animal name, I don't have other information like that. But again, I have that blood sample. I can label the accession with the accession barcode. I can label the sample with the sample barcode. At that point, I could potentially drop my submission form into a batch scanner that reads the barcode, labels it, uploads it into VetView. Sample can go to the lab, and they can actually start processing the EIA in the system. Later, people can come back. And there's some other things we've added in here as well. If you have a Webcam, we actually have a button that actually turn on your webcam. You could snap a picture of the box, picture of the form if you want to. There's also built-in specimen tracking, so it monitors what you're passing through this area and shows you the different buckets or destinations that you have selected in there. You can then create batch forms that shows that this batch is going to the serology lab or the bacteria lab, wherever it's scheduled to go. It's like a packing slip, things like that. So it ties in our specimen tracking as well. But it's just an option there, just another way of potentially another potential workflow that you could do in receiving if you're just trying to get in that minimal viable information to get the case started and then have someone say in a data entry area coming back and adding in client information and or other patient information later in that process. And that's the concept between the dirty area and the clean area, right? So in the dirty area, I want to touch it as minimal as possible, then allowing someone sitting at a desk in a clean area to then go in and do the paperwork later. But also getting that lab documented and labeled into to processing quicker. So it's just another option there. We're looking at doing a batch entry screen, a herd-based screen, kind of a different concept here with being able to say, like, I've got 20 animals, 20 tests, go, and have it build it out quicker as well. That's something we're looking at in the future as well. But that's just another option there in the system. All right. So that's what I have for today. Is there any questions I can answer that I may have missed while we were going through the demos? No, once they submit a portal request, it is locked down to them. They cannot update the information because what we don't want them to do is kind of pull things back or break things that they've already submitted in the mail. So really, we view it as once they submit it, print their form out, it is locked. They can upload attachments, but they can't actually go in and change the request themselves. And they could cancel it and then submit another one, but they don't actually have the ability to edit it on their side. So no, the single and multiple patient templates are locked. Those are kind of the defaults in VetView. The only ones that you can change is if you made your own Accession template. The quick accession is an automated. There isn't an assign option there. That the whole concept there is it's to take the next um, highest number and associate to it. The design behind that was is that you're just letting it pre-number the system, and it then prints the accession label immediately. You assign that to the paperwork, so it's assigning that as it comes out. So it is automated in that sense. Even if you're on suggested mode, it will just take the next highest number for you and associate it to that accession. You can go back and change that number later if you wanted to, but through the Quick app, it is just auto numbering. Any other questions? All right. Again, thank you for your time today. And this will be recorded, put up on our wiki, sent out for anybody who might have missed it. Again, we will be coming around and doing more lab specific training later, but hopefully this gives you a good starting point as you get moving forward in the system. And again, thank you for your time today. Have a good day.
Thank you.